Hi, my name is Zan Chamberlain, and welcome to the American Numismatic Association's Numismatic Theater. This afternoon, we're going to have Chris Pilliod talking to us about an overview of United States counterfeit coinage. Chris?
Thank you, Zan. We're running a little late here, so I hope we didn't keep you waiting too long. We were listening to Bob Evans' dissertation on the SS Central America, and it was a good presentation. He was introduced as a rocket scientist. So one thing I learned today is that rocket scientists can talk for a long time. We're going to talk about counterfeit coinage, if we can get the lights dimmed. I've got a slide presentation, some of the work that we've done, some of the recent counterfeits we found. How do we detect counterfeits? If we've been in numismatics long enough, then we've all been either the victim of a counterfeit or seen them, or perhaps unknowingly sold them. Or if you go on eBay, you'll see them just about every night. Okay, counterfeits, and how do we categorize counterfeits? Okay, there's different ways that people talk about counterfeits. One, you can talk about when they were made. Two, you can talk about how they were made. And then there's a third category, which I'm going to call a third way, which is the way I'm going to present it today. It's a little bit novel, a little bit different. When were counterfeits made? They didn't take long to find out that counterfeiting coins was a lucrative business. At least the charlatans did. So they've been around for thousands of years. Then again, how were they made? Okay. Three basic ways that people counterfeit coins. They can do it by casting, taking a molten metal, impressing the coin into some kind of a mold, and then casting it and replicating it in that manner. Secondly, they can take dies, fabricate the dies themselves, and start striking coins from blanks that they've procured. And the third way is they can alter a genuine coin for numismatic purposes. Why are they made? There's two basic reasons why the counterfeit is in business. One is to pass change off as face value exchange, and the second is to pass them off for numismatic purposes. Let's take a look at some that are passed off as face value, because this is something that we don't typically see. You wonder, why would somebody counterfeit a nickel or a quarter? Well, today it's not done. You know, the Secret Service is a lot more worried about paper money than they are coinage. But back in the 1800s, it meant quite a bit to have a penny or a nickel or a quarter. You could buy a good meal for a dime. And here's an example of an 1862 Indian cent cast in lead. Obviously the wrong color. It's all barked up, banged up. And as we go through here today, I've given a rating system to the quality of the counterfeit and how deceptive they are right here. 1 star is most beginners can detect it. Hopefully most beginners can detect it. And as you get up to 5 star, the highest quality, that's when the experts start scratching their heads, and even the pros and some of even the grading services will accidentally encapsulate counterfeit coins. So there's some awfully good ones out there, and we'll look at some. Another example of a contemporary counterfeit, one that was made for exchange, is a shield nickel. You look at the detail, the digits are too large compared to its genuine counterpart. The shield is the wrong shape. In God we trust, you can see the U is real blobby versus a genuine U. The denticles are weak. This guy hand carved a die, took a steel blank and annealed it, started carving his work, and then found some nickel blanks and started striking them. 1 star, it's pretty obvious, right? Maybe a 2 star. But I give it 3 plus signs because they're collectible. They're not like a cast lead piece. Here's a guy back in the 1800s making a die and creating a piece of art. And somebody made the analogy, a friend of mine, that it's a lot like a hobo nickel, and it is. Okay, Walking Liberty $50, a cast piece, 50 cents. This was done in the Depression, obviously a time of great destitution, and a $50 meant a lot, especially if you were one of about a third of the people that were looking for work. Very obvious. Okay, here's a neat coin. This is a die-struck coin. It's one of the latest die-strucks I've ever seen from 1942. Walking Liberty half. It's not cast because the design is off, the lettering is wrong. And one of the diagnostics I looked at this and found was that he got the E backwards. And the mint makes mistakes, trust me, but I don't think they would get the E backwards on any of their designs. Let's give them some credit. Again, 1 star, very obvious, but at the same time, highly collectible. So what diagnostics do we look for on exchange value counterfeits? Typically, they're made by casting. We saw a lot of casts. We saw some struck, but a lot of them are cast from low melting point alloys, such as lead or tin. Some are made by the hand-carved dies we saw. Almost always poor quality, wrong lettering we saw, lettering too large, too small. But their mindset was, hey, it only has to work once, okay? I'm going to go out and buy me a sandwich, or I need a bed to sleep in. And if I mix this counterfeit in with 3 or 4 good ones, he's never going to notice. And I just said he's unlike the numismatic counterfeits, which we're going to look at, which are going to be scrutinized much more closely. And here's some examples of numismatic pieces. These are done by altering a genuine piece to make it more valuable. They're done by striking. Okay, anybody that's collected for a while and loves small cents, I happen to like small cents, knows that the big key to the series is 1856. They didn't make very many. What was the mintage? 1,000, 1,100, somewhere in there. They started out at $5,000, $6,000 in low grade. So, if you take an 1857, which is common, or an 1858, which is common, there's going to be some desire to make it look like an 1856 and alter it. How can we tell the difference? Okay, an 1856 genuine piece. Take an imaginary line, the red dashed line here, and draw it right through the middle of the spline of the 5. And continue on through the ball at the bottom of the 5, and it almost bisects it in half. Almost makes a perfect half circle out of that ball. Then look at 1858 and do the same thing. And that entire ball is to the right of the dashed line. Most of the time, they're taking 1858s and carving it into a 6 because the bottom is almost already perfect versus a 57 where a lot more work is needed. Another diagnostic, genuine 1856s, the interior of the O of is rectangular shaped. The serif's touch on the F. And in 1858, it's more oval shaped, and there's a space here. So which one is this? Obviously, when you look at the 5, draw your line down, it's an 1858 that's been altered. It also has the oval O, the gap in the serif. Not very deceiving for the collector. 13S Type 2 is another desirable coin in the Buffalo series, right? The S mint mark Type 1 reverse, Starts out around $200 or $300 in low grade. With a full horn, you're up to several $100s. The filly, on the other hand, the plain with no mint mark, is common, abundant for $4 or $5 in low grade. Here's an example of one where a 1913 was ground down or cut in half and then seamed with an S from a different mint mark, a more common mint, maybe 1936S or 35S or 7S are common. 23S Standing Liberties, beautiful design. Again, here's an example of where the S mint mark, much more rare, much more valuable than the filly. This came to me from one of the grading services, and it has a very good looking S, the right position, the right shape, and he wanted a second opinion because the luster was good, it was unimpaired around the mint mark. And if you can do some imaging with a scanning electron microscope and blow this up and really take it up to high mag, I know usually we're talking about 10x, 15x, maybe you have a 20x loop, but with a scanning electron microscope you can go up to 10,000x and not lose resolution. These we took up, we only needed to go to about 400x and look at the very bottom of the mint mark. Here's the mint mark, there's the serif. Well, here's the seam on that 1923S. Here's the field of the coin. So it's obvious this one was added. You can also see evidence where the silver mint mark that he put on, he went in and tooled it. He had a little spatula or like a pick. Had, I'm sure, some high magnification microscope and went in and started shaping the mint mark. And it's ductile, it's like clay. You know, silver in annealed condition is very soft. You can see his handiwork here, shaping the S, smoothing it around. And I always said, gosh, when you get it on the microscope, it looks like frosting on a cake where someone was baking a cake and moving the frosting around. Compare this to a genuine mint mark from a 1908S. No seam at the bottom of the S, good flow lines in the field, metal flowing up, got a little debris inside the mint mark. But good flow lines all the way around, absolutely no evidence of a seam here or here. Here's another shot of the 09S. Again, he took his tooling, scraped around the metal, get nice definition of the S, took his spatula or whatever and moved metal around the side. Like I said, when it's this ductile, it's like frosting on a cake. No flow lines from general mint or a genuine mint strike whatsoever. You saw the flow lines on the genuine moving up and down. No way you'd see that on a genuine coin going in that direction. The force is up into the mint mark. Another one, this came from a collection out east and in the Pennsylvania area where I live, and the dealer got a nice mint state set of Lincoln cents, 1909 SVDBs, the key. Mint state you're looking at close to $1,000. He looked at the S, was concerned about it, gave it to me for study and said, you know, if it's bad, I don't want to see it again. And the reason I give these before I go on 4 stars is that it's difficult to determine these since the host coin is genuine. The 1909 plain is a common coin. It's a $10 or $20 coin in mint state. So 99.9% of the coin has the right look to it. And it's just the mint mark you need to focus on. And if somebody knows how to shape it, the sizing, what the serifs are supposed to look at, they can make it very deceiving because most collectors, unless you're Zan or somebody, they don't carry their scanning electron microscopes around with them. It's very rare to see those at a coin show. Again, you blow it up and get some phenomenal resolution, and you'll see the seam on the mint mark. And here's a case where the guy had like a cookie cutter. You can see the edge of the mint mark up here in the field. The field doesn't even go into the opening of the cavity of the mint mark. It's there's a step right here. So we had these little cookie cutter S's and would go in, solder them in. Here's a piece of solder. You can see a low melting point tin here. And then there's all the evidence of the seam right there. So some diagnostics of altered numismatic counterfeits. Almost always made from a genuine coin of lesser value. We saw evidence of that already. Made by altering the date or adding a mint mark is typical. Some cases they remove a mint mark, right? The 22D Lincoln, they'll remove the D. Look for any evidence of tooling like we saw on the mint mark in the field. 44D Lincolns, they changed the first 4 to a 1. 14D is a key. 16D mercury dimes. The 16 plain is very common. The 16D is a $400, $500, $600 coin starting out in low grade. One of the things you talk to the grading services about is they see a lot of counterfeit mercury dimes. Sometimes in a given year, half of them will be added mint marks that come in. The key to detection, learn the diagnostics. We talked about that a little bit. What does a genuine 1856 look like? If you're at a show and you see a raw one, a raw 1856, try to find one in a slab. Compare serifs, compare the digits and the date. How do they look? And again, just to reemphasize, their mindset is different. These guys are going to work harder to get that to pass because they know somebody's going to put a loop on it or put it under a microscope. Or if it's Zan, he's going to pull out his SEM. And they're going to look at it very closely. So they're going to do more work to make it look genuine than the guy that was making them to spend. Struck counterfeits. A lot of struck counterfeits out there. It's important to learn how they fabricate their dies, because what they're doing here is they're taking a die, fabricating it, and then buying the blanks and striking the coins. And there's two different ways that they produce their dies. One is spark erosion, or EDM, and the other is a coin to die exact transfer. And we'll look at examples of each of these. First, the spark erosion. Back in the early 70s, a large quantity of these started showing up, mostly out on the East Coast, the New York City area, Connecticut, New Jersey. So they're referred to as the New York City Horde. And they constitute a large portion of the spark erosions that are encountered out there. Let's go through a few examples. Here's an 1859 from spark erosion dies. Now I'm going to start talking about diagnostics here. One of the things you look for is a bit of a grainy surface, pebbly, very evident in the feathers if you know the Indian scent series well, and also lack of definition. Good evidence of the lack of definition I'm talking about is here. The ribbon in the scroll on the reverse, there's a break in it. Almost never see that on genuine Indian scents. The feathers on the arrows are very weak. Look at the denticles. Almost missing here at 8 to 9 o'clock. And he did one other thing wrong with 1859. He used the wrong reverse, right? This is an oak wreath. They're all laurel wreaths. So apparently not only was this guy counterfeiting coins, I gotta believe that he might have been stealing the coins that he was using to make his dies, because this is a pattern. This is one of the patterns that were common back in the 1859s when they were going through all the transformations at the mint. And one of the reverses they tried was the oak wreath, and it's only known as a pattern. So that's a $1,500 or $2,000 coin. So the guy was stealing coins, making dies, striking them, and going out and selling them. And gosh, who knows? He's probably graduated to terrorism today. This is a better job. This is a 4-star, spark erosion, but it's a better job because look how much better the detail and the feathers are. One of the diagnostics of spark erosion is you lose definition. Okay, we saw it in that 1859 in the feathers. We don't see it here. This looks very good. And the reverse does as well. But again, he made a mistake on the reverse. I can't overemphasize learning the diagnostics of genuine coins because prior to 1870 on Indian cents, there was only one reverse style, and that first N, it slopes and goes and almost touches the field right here at the bottom of the N. It tapers and basically kisses the field. The middle of the E's here are trumpeted, and we'll see pictures of what they should look like on 1864s in just a second here. Another example, 1890 spark erosion, very deceiving. Here again, I talked about the reverse diagnostics, the end sloping into the field. They used this die only before 1870. After 1870, it was the die that we saw in the counterfeit 1864L, so he got them flip-flopped. He obviously was not a student of the Indian cent series. Key diagnostics for Indian cent counterfeit detection. These guys had hodgepodges of reverse dies, and they had all the keys, the 1864Ls. They didn't know which reverse die was supposed to go with which obverse. Look at it real close. This is the die that was used up until 1870 and again in 1877. It has the shallow end where it almost touches the field and these square E's. This E has an angle to it here. After 1870, they produced a new hub that had a much bolder end. It sticks up above the field very high, and where I like to look is right here on this trumpeted E. There's no angle to the middle of the E's. It's just a curve. Here it looks more like a carpenter square. So, in 1890, when you see an 1890 with a reverse that was disposed of by 1870, well, maybe 1877, since 1877s look like this, you know right away that it cannot be good. Another example, famous 1955 Lincoln cent. Loss of detail in the hair. This is spark erosion. You've got currents and voltages going on to produce the die, so you get arcing and pebbliness. And I believe I've got some close-ups. Yeah, here's some good close-ups. Lack of detail and definition in the lettering. And little mumps, sparks or pits caused by the electrolytic process, and heavy grinding or polishing of his die after he was done. They're making their dies rather from genuine host coins using the EDM or spark erosion technology. So the host coin is genuine. Again, learn the diagnostics. What we saw in his Indian cents, and there's a lot of counterfeit Indians out there, is a lot of times they got the wrong reverse. Spark erosion creates these pits that we talked about and saw, or pimples or dimples on the surface of the die that you don't normally see on a mint-produced die. Another key area is it fails to pick up minute numismatic detail from the genuine host coin. Especially look at denticles. Key area. Here's a good example of loss of detail on a reverse. Here's the genuine coin, real sharp veins in the leaves, acorns. Over here it's almost shot blasted. The counterfeit die lost detail from the spark erosion process. These are the tough ones. You're going to see a lot of 5 stars here because these are by far the most problematic for even the grading services. Now the reason that they're so difficult to detect is that the dies are made using a process similar to what the mint uses. They use about a 8, 10, 12-inch galvano or plaster and then reduce that to a master hub. Here they're taking a coin and doing the same thing. So they're picking up the finest of details from their reducing lathe because they're using a high-grade genuine coin and transferring it mechanically rather than electrolytically. One of the best known came from around this area. He was known as the Bay Area Bandit because in the 60s and 70s, a lot of key coins started showing up in this part of the country. Here's a good example, beautiful color on an 1869/9 Indian cent, nice brown, chocolate, mint state, looks great, 5-star counterfeit. He used the correct reverse, we talked about that, the shallow end. So we can't get him on that one. Here's a close-up. Great detail on the repunching, the 9/9, and everybody wants a 9/9 because it's in the Whitman book, right? So you go on eBay and the 9/9s, even though they're not really that rare, sell for twice what a regular 69 goes for. So I compared it to one that I had in my collection that was genuine, or at least I bought it as genuine. And I photographed them, and here they are, and I said, man, I can't tell the difference. You just can't tell the difference looking at the good versus the bad. So I ran specific gravity, and without getting into a lot of statistical guru, I'm not Bob Evans, and I'm not going to sit here 20 minutes talking about this chart. But a p-value of 0.8 says, hey, it didn't have any difference in specific gravity than the 22 genuine coins we tested. So then you look at the chemistry, because now remember, he's producing dies and then going out and buying his copper blanks and starting to strike them, punching out the blanks and making it. And maybe he made a mistake when he went to purchase his copper. This is what the mint standard was for the Indian cents of 1869. 95 copper, 2.5 tin, 2.5 zinc. So you can non-destructively take a chemistry on a coin and not hurt the surfaces. And when we did this to this Indian cent, hey, the guy bought the wrong copper alloy. He got one with 95 copper, 5 tin, but no zinc. That's not a good sign. Because when you run enough genuine ones, they all have tin and zinc. Now, it may not be exactly 2.5. Sometimes it may be 2 or 3. They didn't have good testing equipment, but it always had tin and zinc in it. And when I saw that, I knew that it was bogus. So I went back and looked at the die again, and really the only distinguishing characteristic, and this is how good these are, was a little die break or chip above the U of United, right there. So now, can anybody tell which one is the good one? Tough to tell, but somebody said the top one, and it is correct. The one that looks bad down here is the good one. The one that looks good is the bad one. That just gives you a flavor for how good a craftsmanship this guy was producing out here in the 60s and 70s. Here's another good one, 1867. I'm going to end the transfer die talk by showing you my favorite Actually, this was up at a coin shop in Santa Rosa. So we knew it was Bay Area. The dealer threw it out and said, Chris, can you tell me what's wrong with this coin? Well, it looks great. Looks beautiful, great detail. Looking at it, I saw a couple die scratches, but you know, hey, those are on genuine coins too, so you can't eliminate it based on that. But if you turn the coin upside down and look around and angle it just right and start looking at the area of the A and T of states, that's when I started to see something wasn't quite making sense to me. And when you blew it up and angled it, you found out that the guy that was making the counterfeits must have run out of blanks that night and reached in his pocket and pulled out a 1952S and struck it on a 52S Lincoln. Now that is a diagnostic of a counterfeit. Unless you're a believer in, what was the movie, Back to the Future. But it does shed light on this guy. Hey, you know, I grew up in Ohio, and we never saw many S mint marks out there. Most of them were out here on the west side. So there's always been rumors he was a California guy. That adds credence to it. We thought he did the work in the 60s and 70s, which makes sense because wheat cents and high grade would have still been circulating around. So he kind of gives a fingerprint to this guy's work. And it's the only one I've ever seen overstruck on a Lincoln cent. Most of them are on true blanks. So doing a chemistry on that one wouldn't have helped because I like to make sure people get credit. That helped me out. And I'd be glad to take any questions. There are counterfeit books out there. Well, the A&A library has a lot of, back in the 70s and 80s, did a lot of monthly updates on, hey, this coin came in and here's the diagnostics. So
use that source.
That's a phenomenal source, yeah. Yeah, I haven't written a book, but I'd like to. It's a lot of fun. You go to the big shows nowadays and finding the coins you like for your collection, the genuine ones, is getting tougher and tougher. And when they're there, it's like, man, it was double the price it was 4 years ago. And so this is kind of one of those venues that, hey, if I come to a show, maybe I'll get a neat counterfeit. And I did this show. I got a neat one, and, or a counter stamp or something more exonumic that might be more affordable.
The 69 double Indian set you showed was really pretty intriguing. I'm curious with all the slabs that you get, or all the certification. Do those companies, BCGS, NGC, do they check metal composition of some of these things? I mean, that's to me a pretty intriguing thing. How do I know that they're right?
Well,
What can I do to
yeah, the question is, when the counterfeits are done so well, like we saw an example of the 1869 over 9 Indian cent, how can we be sure that the grading services got it right too? And the answer is, well, if you look at enough slabs, there are some counterfeit coins and slabs, so they don't get them all right. They're very good. I have to give them credit. They're very, very, very good. They know the diagnostics to look for. They know the look. They can look at the edge of the coin. The third side that we didn't talk about is very important because a lot of times they got that wrong. Grinding marks on the edge. They're very good. You know, I've talked to several of them, and they know their stuff. They really do. And they get most of them right. They get most of them right. And even some of these really good Bay Area counterfeits I brought with me. I've got a couple if you want to look at them here. I stopped down at the services table, and even the good ones, they picked out the genuine from the counterfeits pretty routinely. Pretty routinely.
What about paper counterfeit? I haven't seen that written on that. I work in a casino and I see a lot of counterfeits coming through, and we get in trouble if we accept them. Is there a book that does show for something to teach people like that, what to and what not to?
Oh gosh, I have a hard enough time with coins.
What? Yeah.
I don't know. I don't collect paper money, so I don't know paper money counterfeits, but I'm sure there's got to be some references out there.
Do the grading services use microscopes?
Oh yes, yeah, they got the top quality microscopes. Typically, they don't have SEMs available like we saw with the mint marks, okay? They'll have to contract that work out.
SEM?
Scanning electron microscope, which is really high quality when you get to some of the images we saw there. I mean, it's irrefutable evidence.
Do they automatically send out to, for the, like the 16D mercuries and the 09 SVBs and so forth? Send it out for?
No, those are pretty good. In fact, I was talking to Michael Fahey at ANAX, and he calculates he's looked at probably, I think the number was 50,000 1916D mercury since he's been at ANAX, and half are bogus. And when you look at that many, it's pretty easy. He knows the good from the bad, and again, diagnostics of the D, you know, the genuine 16D mercury, the inside of the D is more triangular shaped. It's not oval. You learn the diagnostics. Once you do, it becomes pretty easy. Pretty easy. Yes, sir.
With the counterfeit dies, the counterfeiter can make lots of coins from the same dies. So,
Correct. Yeah, he wasn't in the business to make the dies and only make one coin.
yeah, right. See,
He was there for mass production.
was there like a suspiciously large group of 69 over 69 Indians showing up that, like, hey, be right? Or,
Well, there's a lot out there. That was one of the best ones that we've encountered.
what made you suspicious about that?
Well, that showed up at an A&A. We had a club meeting, the Indian Cent Club, and the dealer brought it in and said it's bogus, and showed it to some of the veteran dealers and collectors, and there was no agreement. You know, one of the veteran dealers said, no, it's good color. It's got to be good, or they're all counterfeit. All 9/9s are counterfeit. And then the dealer said, no, I'm sure it's bogus. And then we asked him why, and he goes, because I know the guy that made it. So that's when he said, well, Chris, you go ahead and take it and do whatever you want with it. And, you know, first thing I did, like I said, was compare it to mine. And eventually it took running a chemistry on it to find the fingerprint that it was bad. The nice thing is that the guy got some of the reverse dies wrong, like we showed. He was better than the spark erosion guy. The New York City horde seemed to get everything flip-flopped. The Bay Area guy got most of them correct, the reverse die. Not all, but most. But he only fabricated one die for each year. So if you can learn the diagnostics, for example, if you were to see a high-grade 69/9, your suspicion should go up. But if it's not the 9/9, you should rest a little bit more comfortably. And when you go through every year and you find the diagnostics, there's a 72 that he used, a 73, and for some reason, I don't think he was doing it on purpose, he used a repunch 2, a doubled 2 for the 72 die. The 73, he used a misplaced 3, where there's extra 3 up in the neck. And you look for those things. I look for those things. If I don't see them, I rest more comfortably. If I see them, my dander gets up. So again, it's so important to learn the diagnostics. And when you look at the counterfeits, and I'm taking notes every time I see one, okay, this one has a repunch 2, be suspicious. Not all of them are bad, but at least when you get to that, you know, it heightens your awareness.
Chris,
Yeah, Willie.
on the North Bay, Northern California.
Bay Area?
Bay Area.
Yeah.
On these Indians, it seems like what you're saying, that a lot of these counterfeits that were made are the North Bay that are pretty doggone good. I'd kind of blame it on, because I grew up here, it'd probably be like what we would call a hippie just trying to you know, beat the system a little bit.
Well, I'm not an expert on hippies, but I might need to study it. Are you? I don't know. I mean, obviously, the bottom line is greed.
Really good artists. A lot of them were very good artists.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at. I wasn't being derogatory.
And I'll tell you another thing to be suspicious about when you go to a show and see a key date and somebody throws it at you. A lot of times, and when I've seen it, I've experienced it, they want ridiculously cheap money for it because they just want to get rid of it. You know, if it bid price is $500 and they say, here, do you want it for $250? Something's wrong because they should be getting much closer to bid price than that if it's genuine. They're just trying to get out of it and get their money and go.
Speaking of going,
Yeah, let's get out of here.
ANA, World's Fair of Money, would like to present you with this fabulous certificate to
that's
thank you for your
spectacular.
presentation, but wait.
All right, Zan,
There's
thank you.
more. There's also the speaker certificate.